Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for coming to attend tonight. What you're looking at is a town hall meeting. We'd love to have your input on things that have been happening from the state of Connecticut. You have, hopefully, if you don't have one, you can actually access a major public act here in the front of the building. And for the people that work for you, that have been doing such a great job, we have there is a list of all the public acts that are listed. You also may have a question on other acts that have come up in the past, or issues that have happened throughout the legislative year. And these are the people to ask in what's going on with certain things. A couple that caught my eye right off the bat.
These aren't all the acts.
Yeah, this is just major ones. And I'm sure there's plenty more because your sessions usually, is this actually a short session? Supposed to have been? No. Okay. You never get a short session. So my name is Kevin Cunningham. I'm the First Selectman of Plainfield. You have your participants here tonight. Let's see, we'll start with the recent arrival, Heather Summers.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I always like to do my town halls that I share by letting you all ask the questions that you want to ask of us rather than have us talk at you. In here is a briefing. These are some of the major acts. I just will let you know that just because they're in there, it doesn't mean that we all supported these acts. This means what passed. These are the major acts by category within the budget. Within the last legislative session. There is also a lot of additional bills that are just not in there because they're not considered major acts as far as the legislature. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm sorry, I'm just getting here. It took forever to get here today. I'm really excited you're all here. I called first because I wanted to make sure this was air conditioned because it's so hot. But I'm really excited that you're all here in the heat. And I will just pass it on to my good friend and Rep Dauphinais, who we work closely with in the legislature, and then to Representative Dubitsky, who's new to Plainfield, but absolutely not new to the legislature. So I thought we would just kick it off that way, and then just whatever you want to talk about, we will talk about. I thought that's the easiest way. And don't be shy. Feel free to ask any question you want, rather than us just going through this whole book. It's not school. It's here for you guys to ask us what you're interested in. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. And I'm Representative Dauphinais, and I represent Plainfield, Sterling, and Killingly, along with Senator Summers and Representative Dubitsky. We all share Plainfield. So we are here, and I would reiterate most of what, or all of what Senator Summers said regarding that we're here for you to ask questions. And every session, I think the three of us always try to do a session wrap-up, which we just had the long session. We have 2-year terms. The first term is a long session, which goes from January to June. And next year, it will be from February to May. So we usually try to do a wrap-up session, which kind of will answer any questions you might have had regarding what passed and what didn't pass. And we often try to do one before session so that you can maybe share with us some concerns you have and maybe some legislation that you would like to see passed, and we can hear about that as well. So that's the focus, and you can ask whatever questions you like, and I'll turn it over to Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Doug Dubitsky. I represent the towns of Brooklyn, Canterbury, Chaplin, Plainfield, Lisbon, Norwich, Scotland, and Sprague. As Ann and Heather said, this is an opportunity to ask questions, but it's also an opportunity to tell us things. So anytime I go outside, I expect people will come up to me and tell me what they think, good or bad. So if you have a gripe, if you have a question, if you want to say that you think that we're doing a good job, we're always here for that as well. So at that, You know, again, these are, Heather and I and Ann didn't publish this. This is done by the Office of Legislative Research. They decided which of these bills are put in here. There were hundreds and hundreds of bills that went through that were voted on. They are not all in here, as was said before, so if there's something that is particularly of interest to you, please feel free to ask about it or speak about it. If we don't know what it is, I think we all have phones here. We can probably look it up in a matter of seconds. So, who's running this thing?
Okay, I forgot to tell you the towns I represent. I feel guilty because they all told you. I represent 8 towns. I represent Groton, Stonington, North Stonington, Griswold, Preston, Plainfield, Voluntown, and that's it. So I have a really large, one of the largest senatorial districts. It takes me an hour to get from my house to, actually it took me an hour and 20 minutes to get here today. So, I'm sorry?
Need the mic.
Sorry. So I have one of the largest geographical Senate districts. We don't have a lot of people in Eastern Connecticut, so it takes me today it took me an hour and a half to get here today. So sometimes you won't see me as many events as some of the folks that are closer, but that's not because I don't want to be here. It's because I just have to cover such a large geographical area that I can't be in 2 places at one time, especially a lot of the events that happen in the community always seem to happen on the same night. So I try my best to get here as often as I possibly can for different events. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that. So does anybody have a question? Do we want to have somebody moderate this, or?
The lady in the back.
Yes. Closer? This is the first time somebody told me they can't hear me.
My name is Kathy Fedor. I'm from Dayville. I don't do karaoke anymore. I had sent these to your office. It's a little sensitive about the senior center.
Yes, I did get that.
ARPA funds. I'm here with my friend Nancy Beeman from Killingly. We're very concerned about the running of the senior center, which, even though it is not in Killingly, covers all of your regions. And I don't know if you knew Linda Lamoureux. Excuse me, I have a medical problem.
No problem. And if you want to sit, feel free to sit.
Yeah,
You can
good.
sit and.
I might start rocking your mom, you know. Linda Lamoureux ran the center, and she was recruited from the ARC. So she had a lot of skills. And the current person, I don't know if you're aware of her, she has very little skills. My biggest concern is she systematically went through and eliminated long-term programs and positions. And I have it on very good authority, not necessarily that it happened under her watch, but the senior center lost a substantial amount of money in the stock market. And several long-time board of directors left because of that. And there's so much need in the community, and as a 501(c), that isn't how you handle money. My concern is that, you know, the building is on loan to the for the seniors. The town of Brooklyn actually does some kind of lend lease or something. So I went to the state after I saw the ARPA information, and there's a copy of that article. But the state pushed it back to you all, saying that there's going to be a new position, and that person is going to be overseeing all of the senior centers, which is a good thing. I contacted Senior Resources in Norwich because they're actually the area on aging for our area, and they gave me your names.
I have a question for you. We can talk after, maybe offline, we could get together, but I wasn't very clear, I did get this. Most senior centers are run by the towns, not a 501(c)(3), so I was a little confused on, and this is not my district, so I'm not familiar with it, but maybe we could meet after, we could get some more information. I will tell you, I met with Chris Murphy's office today, and they're looking at, which I actually think is a good idea. There's this thing called community investment funds, which comes down from the federal government, and they're looking to see if they can change the language so that they can include community centers, YMCAs, and senior centers in this pool. We have a lot of money here in the state of Connecticut for CIF. I know Plainfield has applied for different grants, but right now it's limited to certain things, and they're looking to try to open it up to help senior centers, community centers, and YMCAs.
And I understand that. The point is, the prior administrator of the center was very knowledgeable because she came from art.
Right.
And so she did a lot of grant funding and all those things and kept it running.
But I think the best is if we could meet with you separately, because
I'll be here.
there's a lot of questions to
Okay.
probably ask. And, but thank you for bringing this
It's
to us.
great to meet you.
Nice to meet you also,
And you too.
and thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
There's no questions? No complaints? No concerns? No moments of joy? Nothing? Come on, there has to be something.
Don't believe mine is in this list.
Okay.
Just with the EMD, I'm very upset with them. I've sent
Okay.
emails to both of your offices already. I got a response from one.
What was your problem with the DMV?
They currently have a requirement that you have to set up an appointment to go in
Yes.
there. No one has been able to provide me with the policy or anything that was created that requirement. I was thrown out of Norwich, I was thrown out of Wilmington. After sending emails to Attorney General's and DMV offices, I got a phone call from a gentleman who was trying to find out, what can we do to make this easy for you? Is there a better time? And I said, right now. I said, I want to be able to walk in there whenever I want to, like I always have, 48 years, 42 years. It's the first time I walked in the DMV office. And he said, why can't we do this? This is a public building, public service, we pay for this. After back and forth, because they were trying to find me, I said I was on vacation. And got a phone call from that person's boss. Same thing, what can we do? What's a better time? I said, I'm on vacation, I don't want to talk to you. Well, what's better? I said, well, when I get back from vacation, I'm going to walk down, go back to Norwich, I'm going to walk in and get my trailer registered. And hung up on it. I went back, when I came back from vacation, I went down, walked in the office, and the security guy said, do you have an appointment? You need an appointment. I said, I'm a taxpayer, I don't need an appointment. And he walked off, went and talked to somebody behind the counter, and she came out and said, is your name Todd? I said, yes, it is. She says, well, let's take care of this. You have a trailer, right? I said, fine. So they thought, okay, good, we'll pacify this person and put him in a closet. No, I'm still making life, stating this everywhere I can. There's no reason for this.
So you want the policy that put this in place?
Yeah, and who signed off on it? Who said it was
The
okay?
commissioners do have the authority to create policy. I know that this was created
This
under
is
COVID.
more than a policy.
Right, I'm just saying, I'm just
The
letting
policy
you
is
know.
not law. This is
Well, I'm
constitutional.
just letting you know that they created this under COVID.
Yes,
because-
and that's one thing I finally did get from Michelle Gibbons, who's the only one who's
But
really
we can
corresponding
see
with it.
if this is a policy that they have passed in their regulations. I don't know.
And
if
COVID is
they
over,
use-
like I pointed to them. COVID is over. The president said so, the governor said so, I said so. I never said it was there.
Right. I
never
can't
believed
answer
that
that,
yet.
but we can find out for
But-
you.
So,
There is,
they won't give me this policy.
well, it wouldn't be a policy, it's a
It may-
procedure.
Okay, whatever it is.
So,
Who signed off on it and approved it? I don't get that.
It was undoubtedly the commissioner.
He's blocking.
There is no greater critic of DMV in this state than me.
Good.
I can assure you, I have bitched at them for everything they have done since I've been in office and before. But I can tell you from personal experience, the appointment thing actually works pretty well.
30 days. The last time I checked, it was 30 days out at Norwich.
It was one?
30 days. I had to go, I was registering a trailer so I could get all my spring cleanup in my yard.
I usually
They want me to wait 30 days?
I usually go to Willimantic, and I have had the experience that I've actually called up for an appointment and got one the same day in Willimantic. And when I got there to the office in Willimantic,
About 60 people sitting in there.
there is a person sitting at a desk right near the door. You give them your name, they look you up, and they direct you immediately to a specific person. If you get there on time, this is my experience. You know, maybe you've had a different experience. Maybe it's different in Norwich. Maybe it just happened to the stars aligned, and it happened to me. But I'm telling you what my experience was. I was literally in and out of that place in 10 minutes, and it was so easy that I was thinking of calling up the commissioner and apologizing for some of the horrible things I said about him over the last few years. That was, I think it was last year, maybe a while ago.
Yeah, right now, when I went to Norwich, and I was accused access the first time, I looked through the window, I saw 3 people sitting on chairs in the entire office. I said, what is this? I said, well, they have appointments and this and that. Okay. A young man came up at the same time to me, and he said, look, I had an appointment for yesterday. I couldn't make it. I need to register my car or I'm going to lose my job. No, you got to go back, re-register, get another appointment, send it back. Poor kid, wait another 30 days, lose a job. And there's 3 people sitting in this building. Then I went to Willimantic the next day, 60 people.
So
I stopped counting at 60.
Would you?
Is this for COVID? Why do you have 60 people crammed in a Willimantic DMV?
Would you be happy if they kept this system but allowed for some walk-ins?
They should definitely allow for walk-ins. You should be able to have a separate window and say, look, this is the speed line.
Is that a yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
But they should not be refused and required only for that.
So if we ask the commissioner to make a provision for walk-ins who simply can't do an appointment, would that be okay?
Well, absolutely. But I think the DMV should be open. There should be a separate, for people who want to streamline something, who think they're going to be served faster, which doesn't. Because this was this, and then I was told it was for COVID. I said, and I pointed out, I said, look, COVID's over. I didn't get a response to that. Then they're talking about, well, this is because of the initiative from the governor to streamline government. You know the DMV's budget has gone up by over $1 million since 2019, and their employees' numbers have gone up. One of the few things I did get from my FOIA request, everything else has been ignored. And so, how is it streamlining government? You got more employees and you're spending more money, and you wait 30 days to set up an appointment. That's not streamlining.
Again, you may have had that experience. I did not. I made an appointment the same day.
I walked in and got served the same day too.
Maybe
I
it's
gave
hit
a
or miss.
speech before I walked out to everybody sitting in that office. I said, look, I walked in the door and I got taken care of. You guys all waited 30 days. Speak up for yourself.
We will look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me try to get my message out to everybody who listens.
I appreciate your letting us know.
Sir, can you give us your contact information so we can get back to you? We can do that
I
after.
sent you both emails, and I can send you one. I'll send you more
I
information.
would like, right, I get about 700 emails a day, so if I can get your name and stuff, then we can get back to you, that would be great. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Just come on up.
Or you can ask from there, you don't have to come up if you don't
Well,
want to.
it's a little hard to hear in this room.
In 2021, we bought a house at 103 South Water Street in Plainfield/Wilmington. I have concerns about no speed limit signs on that road. and no signs watched for children.
I'm sorry, what road?
103 South Walnut Street, it's in Plainfield.
Okay.
Like I said, cars speed up and down, motorcycles speed up and down, there's no sign for speed limit, no watching for children. And no, people put signs up there, do something about the speeding.
That would be me.
Town.
So if you do me a favor, after the meeting, we can talk, whether they would approve it or not would be based on what they would see. They would probably also go to that site to see if they can do some more patrolling to find out what's going on, but I would definitely appreciate some time with you afterwards.
Okay, and also, they're supposed to be working on the trail. The trail is going, what is it called, Quinnipiac?
The Quinnipiac, yes.
Okay, I live right on the trail. I'm on that house, it's right there.
Yep.
I want to know, what am I concerned about as in protecting my property? What they're gonna do about like the wildlife down there? There really wasn't nothing in there that told me what they're exactly gonna do. Because my property is right on the trail, but now you should be on some of the trail again.
All right, so we did have some public meetings on that, but that's fine. We can talk about that afterwards, and I can actually hook you up with the person who's working on that from the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
Okay?
That's good, thank you.
Come on up. Come on down. You still can't hear me? Okay. You can go after her. After this lady.
My name is Nancy Beeman, and I was reading the papers that you gave here, and they were talking about the funding for education for the schools. Who is the person, Ms. Dauphinais, you're the representative for Killingly, right? Okay. Well, my grandson was in 7th grade this year, and there were issues. But my problem that I'd like to mention to you is there's nobody to talk to about them. Because as you've noticed, I don't know, almost every single position in the Killingly schools, there is going to be a new principal, a new assistant principal. This one is moving from here, this one. I mean, I was waiting for the end of the school so that I could address the problems I had with these people. But there's no one to talk to. And my major complaint, and I was reading about the financing, the financial literacy thing and all of that kind of stuff, which I think is a great thing. But my grandson spent day in and day out on a computer. And as the gentleman was talking about COVID, he did the homeschooling where he was doing that kind of stuff. Well, we don't need to do that anymore. We don't need children to sit in a classroom day after day after day and do computer work. There was a report he had to do. He did not have to research it. All the information was on the website. All he had to do then was to transfer it from one place to another. But, it was pretty much no active engagement with the teachers and with the material to be learned. And I think that it's time for that to be over now. I am a retired teacher. I have a bachelor's in elementary education. I have a master's in special needs, and I have a certification in a special reading program. Everybody knows that kids learn best if they're interacting with the materials, with the teacher, blah, 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 blah. And there was none of that for most of the time. Now, my grandson, I didn't know what to do. I worked through COVID, and kids are masters at learning how to evade doing work on the computer. I can't pull up, is somebody laughing about it? Oh,
It's true.
Yes, I was just on.
They do it as old men, too.
Could I ask you a question?
Right, I was going to ask you too.
Go ahead.
Go.
What do you consider engagement with the material?
I think a teacher talking the lesson, not saying, here is page 27, do this page and do the questions at the end. There's no engagement with a teacher with that. You know what I'm saying? They just go in, they sit at the computer, and they go, ch-ch. And so then my grandson would say, I couldn't find it. My computer didn't work. They have a million excuses. They know how to go on a math site and do the same math example over and over and over and get the credit like they worked on the math assignment for the whole half an hour or whatever.
Let me ask you, and how do you think that we as state representatives and a state senator can address that?
Well, if the state is doing giving money for a budget approvals of $163.7 million increase in educational grant sharing, and so somebody's making these things in listening to representatives in the Senate.
We provided funding, but we don't, the Board of Education, local Board of Education is the one that creates and approves the curriculum,
Right, and
not
so
us.
the curriculum is not acceptable.
So if it's not acceptable to you, the person that you should be speaking to is your Board of Education at Killingly. They have meetings regularly. You have to go in front of them and express your concerns. We here don't have any control over the local boards of education. All we do is we set the funding that goes to education, but when it goes to the towns, it becomes a local control, local issue. You're not going to want to hear this, but I would suggest you run for the Board of Education in Killingly, because then you have much more say in what the curriculum is and how teachers teach.
Well, I have thought of that. In fact, I think you came to my door one time on Sunset Drive with Anderson, and I mentioned that I was thinking about running for the board.
That's where you can make your most impact if you're not happy with what's happening.
All right.
And we don't mean to brush you off. That's where
No, I'm sorry.
the change is.
Yes, waste your time.
You're not wasting our time. It's good for us to hear.
And there's, you can also email, and that way all the members get the email. And I know some of them personally do read all the emails, and they welcome, your thoughts and ideas. So I would suggest that you do that. And some things I know are directed by, and as you spoke about being a new superintendent, new principal, directed by those individuals, not necessarily the Board of Ed, but I understand what you're saying. They're all kind of turning over. We have a lot of that going on across the state. There's a lot of shifting of teachers leaving, coming in, administrators, in a time where it's hard to find people to work. It's going on across the state. But.
Right. But, so there's no consistency with what's going on, because I know from my experience, a new superintendent comes in, it used to be, all the curriculum goes out and his curriculum comes in, and then 2 years later, he's gone, and so that you need that, I think, consistency of someone you talk to who you know is going to be working on this. Well, thank you very much.
The other thing is
Thank you for coming.
The superintendent does work for the Board of Education. So if you're not happy, you can talk directly about what's happening as far as the superintendent or what's happening in the classroom with the teachers, and they're the ones that have control and authority over the teachers and the superintendent.
Right. But I have a feeling that the teachers were sort of locked into what they had to do about the degree of computer stuff. I don't think that they necessarily had the liberty to change whatever they wanted. They were sort of stuck in. But thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Sir, you're up. You wanted to go next, right?
Andy, the guy behind you. Oh.
Francis Young found out about the meeting today, and I should be helping with things for the first time. I got a late start. So I have a couple questions, and looking through this, and I've seen this from time to time on the internet, and I've heard different things. And one is safe storage of prescription drugs. Well, I don't get any prescription drugs, but there are no children in the house. It's a requirement. I mean,
Sorry, which bill are you talking about?
safe storage and prescription.
Yeah, I believe it applies to everything. They're wanting those to be kept safely away from children in the event that they would be able
But
to.
they're not filtering out.
It's not clear. I don't recall.
Yes, it is required on that particular, whatever that classification of drug is, because there's no way for a pharmacist to know whether children are in the house or not, even if you tell
Yeah, but I
them.
mean within your own house, not the pharmacy.
Yep, they have to have the label.
Yeah, do they have to be stored the same way? What's on the lock and key or?
No, it's just a special label that's affixed to the prescription.
Okay. Next is safeguards on assault weapons to be sold, to get a certificate of possession, to transfer, or to sell them. Well, I don't have assault weapons. I'm not a big fan of assault weapons. I have a hunting rifle myself and whatnot, but these permits, I mean, they apply across the board, I believe, right?
I'm not sure what your question is. I'm sorry.
Permits? Which permits are you talking about?
Firearms?
Maybe we should go over that bill. There was a bill that passed, I think all three of us voted against that bill, which was a bill that was for gun violence prevention.
No,
Which-
it wasn't.
I'm going to finish, Doug, which that was the title of the bill. However, all of us agree that it does absolutely zero for gun violence prevention. It added a list of additional requirements for legal gun owners that are already, Connecticut has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, so it just added on top of that. So I think all three of us voted no. I don't want to speak for my fellow reps, but we all voted no. We also have introduced many amendments to actually really do something about gun violence, and they were all rejected on party lines. So Doug is probably the most expert in this gun bill, so do you want to go through that?
Well, I'd just like to know what the question is. You know, what is, you're talking about a
If I
permit.
wanted to sell the rifle, do I have to get a permit? Or do I simply have to do it to a licensed person?
You know, if you have a, what is it, bolt action?
Yeah.
Okay, bolt action rifle does not have to be what they call registered. But you, in order to purchase ammunition or purchase a firearm, are required to have either a long gun eligibility certificate or a pistol permit.
Yeah. Well, I have the ammo permit I'm trying to get. I think I'll apply for the pistol permit because they're supposed to revise the laws, right? And rescind some of the restrictions after a certain period of time. Whatever happened to the 10-year limitation?
On what?
Requalification, or not requalification, but I don't know how to phrase it.
You mean the expiration of your pistol permit?
No, expiration of any judicial action.
The only 10-year expiration I can think of is back in the early 90s, there was a federal assault weapons ban that was for a 10-year period that was in effect, and that was allowed to expire. So there is no federal ban on what the federal government referred to as assault weapons. There is no actual thing called an assault weapon.
We're going down different avenues here, but that's okay. My next question, it's a common sense question. They don't allow, as I understand my hunting laws, right, more than a 22 to hunt in the state forest. But if you're going to be protecting yourself against the black bear, Cook Hill Road had an incident where 2 dogs were attacked, and I guess they were actually killed by a black bear. And we've seen them at the church. So, am I afraid of a black bear? Not really, unless he's in a bad mood. But I'm more worried about it like a bobcat having rabies or coyotes. And a couple of people I know have taken out 98-pound coyotes. So if you're working like where I own land, State Forest basically abuts it. So the loggers that work, most of them do carry, and they'll rat people out, right? But what's the state law now on carrying a pistol or a rifle with you if you're working in the state forest?
You cannot carry any firearm for personal protection in a state forest. I have either introduced or co-sponsored a bill to eliminate that and to allow people to carry in state forests almost every year I've been in the legislature. There's also currently a federal lawsuit, which I am not involved in, but I follow pretty closely, that is trying to overturn that ban. So,
I can get my vote.
as we stand today, there are a very limited types of firearms can be carried in state forests only for hunting purposes, and handguns for personal protection are not among them.
I think it's almost impossible to be in a hunt. What does that mean now? If you were carrying a weapon and you're driving through a town, what they consider to be a town road in the state forest, are you technically in the state forest?
That's a good question.
I think that would be legal advice, and since I'm not your attorney, I probably couldn't give it to you if I did know the answer, and I don't.
It basically means I couldn't get from one point to the other if I was carrying a pistol, if that's the interpretation. So I've never asked this question, and most of the guys at the coffee shop used to, if I went there, they had permits. But anyway, the next thing I find here is, maybe I'm finding too much. Where'd it go? Extending Husky for children to immigrants that are citizens. I mean, look at Cal. I mean, look at California, Oakland, and all these people that are homeless. And I mean, we're handing out all kinds of benefits to these people, like the expense of Social Security.
I'll let Ann handle that one.
I'm sure Senator can speak to it as well, but we were already doing that, and we just expanded that number. So I think it went until, was it 11?
It went from
and then
12 to 15.
12 to 15. So we did do birth to 12, and now we're doing birth to 19. So we just expanded that. So we have been doing that all along, whether you agree with that or not. We have been providing illegal immigrants in that age group free health care. Did you want to add to that?
Yes, no, that's basically what the state has been doing, and there are people in the state that believe, and this is true, it's a policy decision. You know, if you are covering an illegal child for health care, whether you want to or not, I'm just putting this out there numbers-wise, there is a match from the federal government to provide funding for Husky, which is Medicaid. So if you don't provide it, our hospitals are absorbing the cost when an illegal child shows up at the emergency room and let's say has an asthma attack, that's a $2,700 bill. Versus if you're providing Husky, when the child can then go to the doctor, it's a lot less overall cost. And that's why the state of Connecticut has been doing this before, and they have now increased it from 12 to 15. So those are the arguments that you hear.
The last point, and this is property, not money, is with the last rebound in Richmond, I'm now paying 3 times as much on my land as I did in 2009 for real estate taxes. That's a 300% or 297% increase. Holy cow, you know, I don't receive any type of increase such as that from regular retirement. So, the assessor kind of rules the roost there. Came along, and before she retired, if she had her way, it would have tripled before the last reval. And I won the appeal, and on the reval, I lost the appeal. So, with Public Act 490, my contention was, and it's not in Public Act 490, there should be allowable a 50-foot fire strip anywhere on the property to, as long as it's within the boundaries of the forest or 490, allow for a fire lane. And that comes from a book I got from the university, I think it is in Texas, back in the 70s. And it's been the basis of why I argue and disregard most of the advice I get from Connecticut state foresters and go with private foresters, because if you follow the advice of the state forester, they tell you to put a tree every 20 feet, and with drought, with gypsy moth, with beetle cats, and all the different diseases, you have a lot of dead trees. So I think it should be worded into Public Act 490 that 50-foot fire strips are allowable and not to be taxed as anything other than Public Act 490. The assessor, they see an open area, they want to call it, what do they call it? Open space. And that's a different category and a higher tax rate. So I think 50-foot fire strip would be a reasonable thing to have included into.
Well, I would refer you to the First Selectman with regard to assessments. I can speak to PA 490. If it's in PA 490 forestry has a 25-acre minimum.
Right.
And there has to be 100 trees per acre in that area, and it has to be certified by the state forester that it is.
Mine was just logged again, so you know it's going to take a little bit of time to reclaim. But the point being that within those 25 acres, a 50-foot wide fire strip should be permissible and not negate the 490 classification and be exempt from all the other requirements. In other words, it should be a self-standing and good policy, if nothing else, to have in place.
Well, we can talk about this offline. I'm very familiar with the PA 490 laws and the court cases. You know, simply by having one area that is not forested does not typically kick you out of the forestry designation. But you know, even if they consider most of your property forestry and a 50-foot strip to be open space, the difference in taxes is almost nothing. The difference between forestry and an open space.
Well, it could imperil the 25 acre, the marginal in the qualification for the category.
Well, why don't we talk about this offline? You know, if this is a specific issue that you have, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. But I'd have to see the details. So, you know, feel free to get in touch with me, or we can talk after this meeting, and you can show me the particulars, and I can tell you what I think.
Thank you. Come on up.
My name is Steve Ziegler, I live in Newsom. I have some property in Newsom that I like to notice. over the years since probably 1972 or so. I've had good tenants, I've had bad tenants, but I see on page 14,
It's a terrible bill.
on item 1, allowing municipalities to civil penalties of $2,000 per day. Against landlords, for each violation of municipal rules. Can you explain the rationale from 250 to the 2,000?
All three of us voted no. This is a terrible bill. It's an absolutely horrible bill. This is the fair share bill. There is no rationale for that. It's
So here's the
outrageous.
situation with a lot of this is that they're tenants for many years. Some tenants are great tenants, some tenants are not so great tenants. And sometimes there are times when the loan will be granted to someone, they accumulate things, and the place that is safe at one point may not be the same 3 or 4 years down the road. Normally, if I have a tenant, it's inspected regularly. Other than that, before I rent to someone, comes over and inspects prior to the occupancy. After that, it's just when most of the tenants don't stay very long, 2 or 3 years. Most some stay longer and it creates a problem. So I'm just curious what the rationale for the rent loans. This involves like from a fine to a confiscation of property. Or could be, right? The potential is that. Kevin, I don't know, will you stand on this from your municipality?
I'm looking for the support from our legislators, and obviously they were outvoted. Number one. Number two, I think on item 1 it says it allows municipalities,
It doesn't mean they will.
and that doesn't mean they will.
Yes.
And that's where I would stand.
That's why I prefer that.
There's some other things in this law that are also really difficult. It limits your ability with deposits, what you can do with them. And I don't know if you've read it, like you have to
I
have
understand that
the
portion.
lease in
Those-
different
those-
languages, it's all kinds of. This was a big fight in the Senate. This is one of the last bills that we had during the end of session, and we argued on it for 8 hours, trying to come up with amendments. And every amendment failed to try to make it better. This is really putting landlords at a huge disadvantage, where tenants have basically all the rights. I mean, it's already difficult enough when you have a tenant that is not paying and trying to go through the eviction process. But this came out of, in the Senate anyway, it was a priority for the senators from Bridgeport, Connecticut.
And I just wanted to add that many of these bills, believe it or not, are way worse but at the beginning, and they've been watered down quite a bit. So as bad as this bill is, it was way worse. I think Representative Dubitsky can probably speak a little bit more to it because I know he's on that committee, but that's what happens with a lot of these bills. So we do on the backside of things really try to have conversations that make them less painful, but I just wanted to add that.
There is what I feel is a misguided line of thinking in the legislature right now, mostly on the Democrat side, that feels that landlords are evil, and that in order to create more housing opportunities, landlords need to be penalized every way possible. So if you look through this bill, you see that there are a number of different ways that landlords are penalized for simply making housing available to people who need it. And one of the things I regularly do when these bills come up is I argue that making it more difficult for a landlord to rent housing to people who need housing does not in any way increase the availability of housing. And that what we should be doing is the opposite, in making it easier for landlords to rent to people who need a place to live.
Exactly.
You know,
I think
it's
the
general
general trend is to get corporate landlords as opposed to private landlords.
Well, but why is that? You know, one of the reasons, you know, that one of the reasons why it's easier for a big corporation to do it than it is for a little guy who only owns a few houses is because of all the regulation and all the paperwork and all the mandates, where a corporation is able to have a staff that can do that where a small guy can't. So the policies that that the legislature has been pushing into the industry has made it harder for small people to rent houses and to be landlords, and easier for big corporations to do it. The policies that they are pushing are exactly doing the opposite of what they claim they want to happen.
Thanks. I have one more question, one more concern. 395.
Because they're doing exactly what they want to happen. They want the big corporations to control housing. It's not a mistake. This is, it's deliberate. And, the big cities are out of control. They have all kinds of problems.
Ma'am, when this gentleman's finished, why don't you come up to the microphone?
Okay, I have one more question. 395, exit 35. Are you familiar with that? Issue on 395? Okay, so there are many accidents on 395. There are many accidents on 395, period. But the particular concern for all of us who use 395 is the exit 35 that branches off to Rhode Island, the old
695, just the 695 exit.
Where he's
Right,
glitched,
exactly.
okay,
So my
yes.
question, did the Connecticut State Police, I don't know if you know this or not, just about the question. Do Connecticut State Police, like Troop D, communicate with DOT to explain what the hazard is of that exit, that interchange?
I haven't heard anything about that intersection and what happens. So you're the first that's brought it to my attention.
So anybody who drives by exit 35 that doesn't read anything on state of Connecticut reports on accidents there can witness the rubber in the road. When you'd be driving on 395 north and someone will come up in a left lane, pull in front of you, or they'll cut you off the road, down the embankment. This is common, like, once a week. I'm surprised that you don't know about this.
I have never heard that before, and I live up that way, and I do go that way. So you're the first person. The only thing I've heard is that when you get on that extension, you're supposed to bring your speed down to 50, and that's a problem. But other than that, I've never heard of that.
There every other day. I don't do something like that every other day.
Just to add to show you where that is and what the issues are, where if you're going northbound on 395 and there's the exit for Rhode Island, which is on the right side, that's the split that we're talking about. The issue is that a lot of people misjudge where they are, forget where they are, and they're in the left-hand lane and they try to do a two-lane cut over to get to Rhode Island. And that's where a lot of accidents have been occurring over the last few
Or
years.
even those going to Massachusetts, right?
Yep.
In a great way. We witness this. I mean, and
So do you need
we've
more
been very close to
signage, or do you need?
we've been very close
There
to
could be
involvement ourselves.
Just about anything would be helpful from the Department of Transportation, even if you had lit signs that were flashing. Anything would be helpful.
Signage is in,
But
something in the road,
something, I think, to get their attention well before you get
I
there.
don't know the answer. I know there was a problem.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I was not aware of that, really.
Oh,
But
It's a
I
state
understand what
highway,
you're saying,
it's
because
interstate.
it makes perfect sense what you're saying.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Our other problem with that is that it is just past where you have the rest stops.
Yep.
So you have now the merging of people coming onto the highway, and then people who are trying to figure out their way to get over to that 695 exit.
Who's next?
No, he's setting it for you.
Oh, you're saying it's right in my next gentlemen, thank you.
Hi, Naomi Smith, 96 Community Ave, Plainfield, Connecticut. I actually have a couple questions. I was currently, just today, reading in the Connecticut Examiner, they put out an article about House Bill 6892 on blight. And I guess, Mr. Dubitsky, you were very against this bill. You said it was terrible. I'm just wondering if you could expound more on that, why you found it to be terrible, what was in it. I didn't get a chance to find the bill, look through it. I just found it today.
About 4 years ago, there was a big problem in a couple of the big cities. I know it was New Haven, I think the other city was Bridgeport. They were having a big problem with abandoned buildings that they weren't able to either clean up or get the owners to clean up. And there was a feeling in those cities that the inability of the city to take steps to mitigate these abandoned buildings was causing a general downturn in those areas. And Martin Looney, who is the President pro tem of the Senate, was pushing a bill to allow the biggest cities, Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, and Waterbury, to essentially go to court and have the court assign somebody, appoint somebody as sort of a conservator over these abandoned properties. The way the bill turned out is it's not just the municipality, but it's anybody, any person of interest, any person who claims that they have some reason to go to court can go to court and get a conservatorship over property. And what they can do is they can then spend their own money to fix up the place, and that money becomes a lien on the property, and eventually they can foreclose on that lien and get the property. The idea was that this was going to help the big cities. The limit, there was a population limit, 45,000 people per year in the city, in the municipality or more, because it was designed for the big cities. None of the big cities took advantage of it. Hartford, New Haven, Waterbury, Bridgeport, they didn't use this law at all. They didn't go to court. They didn't try to take over any of these abandoned properties. However, the year after that bill passed, there was a new bill to eliminate the population threshold completely. So that would have affected every town, including Plainfield, including little tiny towns where they don't really have a problem with abandoned buildings, but people moving in from places like New York City seem to think that they have a problem with farms. And a lot of the small towns have a lot of farms. And one person's blight is another person's farmyard. So I opposed it strongly, and I said that until the cities, who this bill was designed to help, actually use it, and we actually have some history of why these buildings are abandoned, how the towns go about going to court, getting these conservatorships, fixing them up, seeing if this thing actually works, that we shouldn't be expanding it into towns with 800 people who live in town. So I opposed it and was able to kill it for 2 years. This year, I was able to get the threshold. I think the threshold is now 15,000 or 20,000, something like that. So it will now affect,
According to the article.
okay, so 15,000, so it'll affect Plainfield, which is 16,000.
Just under 15,000.
Oh, I thought you were 16. Okay. So I consider my efforts mostly successful. I know there are town leaders in small towns who think that they would like this tool. Unfortunately, I sometimes have to tell them, I'm sorry, I don't represent towns, I represent people. And the people of the towns that I represent would have been injured by this bill. So I fought it very hard, and thankfully I was able to at least keep the threshold at 15,000.
Now, my question with the bill, thank you for explaining all of that. Is there any way that this is going to come back, and could there be some kind of clause for an exemption for the farmland? So the farmland is not affected under any kind of a blight ordinance in the municipality in that set?
Probably not, because the municipalities have the authority to create their own blight ordinances. So it really would be a patchwork. And what that would do is it would essentially require a farmer in every town to go to court and spend money on attorneys that I don't think is necessary. Plus, I'm always very skeptical about carving out exceptions to bad bills, because those exceptions eventually go away.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. And then my next question, and I had spoke to you briefly after your last visit to town. I was unable to attend. I wanted to bring it to the attention of Senator Summers, as well as our discussion on it. So I work as a PCA for a state-funded program called the Community First Choice Program. There's actually 2 conservators that do the pay for the employees, for the workers, but it is a state and federal funded program. And what it does is it allows people who are disabled or seniors that are on Husky Medicaid to be eligible for this program, where they get in-home services. The issue that I have run into is that a lot of our seniors, I find this really appalling. If you look at the threshold for Medicare and Medicaid, 2 adult seniors, $1,700 a month is what anything under that's considered low income. I think it was like $800 or $900 for an individual. I don't know of anyone in our economy today that could live on that per month. I mean, that is such a low-ball estimate for the income monthly. I mean, when you figure, we have seniors that have owned their homes, they've worked hard all their life. They retire, they collect Social Security. They're maybe making $3,000 a month for a married couple, okay? Now, their health is declining. They cannot get on the in-home care programs because they're too overqualified by maybe $1,000, $400, some $200. So their only resort is to either pay for the in-home care themselves out of pocket, which becomes very costly. Some of the Medicare programs will allow them to maybe have a home health care worker for 2 hours a week. Or they can sign over their homes to the state and they can go in convalescent care to receive health care. any kind of home health work. I don't understand that because our state is spending so much money on convalescent costs when it would be cheaper if we could expand these programs by raising that threshold for our seniors and allow them to stay in their homes and have their dignity with their own PCA workers. And the nice thing about the Community Choice Program is that they're their own employer. They hire who they're comfortable with coming in their home. So the state's not stepping in or an agency saying, here's the person that's going to be, you know, in your home. Talking to a couple of the state agencies to find out, the program does receive some federal funding. So I'm not sure, and I spoke to Doug about this before, if that is what is restricting, but I think it needs to be addressed. Because I think it's a disservice to our seniors. I mean, it's crazy that we have seniors living in their homes. They're paying at least $400 a month, some of them, for their property taxes. The inflation in our market is through the roof, and we are saying anything over $1,700 a month for 2 adults is over the poverty line. Groceries alone for 2 individuals, no way, no way. So I think there needs to be some more discussion for our seniors up in Hartford, and where they're not considered low income, but they're not really living high on the hog either. They're just over that threshold.
I'd like to talk to you offline about that. We've done some things, you know, for this year we changed some of the Medicaid reimbursements to be like 250% of the poverty level. We've increased it in different areas. Each year there is a bunch, I was going to say a huge load of requests to increase Medicaid funding, whether it's reimbursement to physicians so that physicians will take Medicaid, whether it's, you know, this specialty or that specialty. So I'd like to learn more so that we would be able to take a look at what that is. And I know it stinks. It's like you get to a certain point and you're just cut off.
Right.
And, you know, the first thing you will experience if you go into a hospital, they will say, I'm sorry that you are not able to care for yourself. You can start to spend all your money down until you have to go on Title 19, basically. So, but I would like to talk to you.
But the interesting part is that once you're over 65 years old, if you try to apply for Husky C for the Medicaid, once they hit the application process where put your income in, they pretty much will call you and say, no, you don't fit the criteria. They don't even establish what's your mortgage, or do you pay rent, or what your utility bills is. And that's discriminatory because every other person under the age of 65 applying for those programs, they will take those things into consideration. But if you're over 65, they do not. And even in the federal level, this was argued on the floor, that there are discriminatory practices happening against our seniors where certain things in their living arrangements are not deducted, where for other people who are applying, they consider those deductions. But that age requirement automatically throws them into the Medicare. So again, I just think it needs further investigation. And I just think that the state could save a bundle of money if they had expansion in this program. I think if you look at the numbers, it would justify itself.
Okay. Well, we'll talk after. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Come on up.
Anybody else?
Somebody's got to have a question or a comment.
I know we've been here over our hour.
There you go. Come on up, please.
I'm Charlie Hutchins. I come from the town of Killingly. I'm an advocate for restoring whole milk by freedom of choice to the school nutrition program. I am not much of a public speaker. You already know that. You're doing pretty good. But you know, sometimes you just, oh, it should be loud enough without that. Sometimes you just got to pick a spot and say it. And that's what I've been doing for the last year and a half. I want to make sure you know, I left a bunch of handouts on the table on at the back door. Please, everybody, take them, spend the time, read through them. It's a complicated subject, but yet it's a simple subject. Did you all drink whole milk when you were in school? I see a lot of heads going, yep, yep, yep. Your kids can. And you know what? If somebody says, well, I don't have kids at school. Yes, you do. You pay taxes to the Board of Education, right? And if the kids, how can I say this? If the kids develop health problems, it's going to mean an increase in your school board taxes. Because they'll have to hire somebody.
Hey, Charlie?
Another nurse.
It's Charlie, right?
What's that?
Is that your name, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay. Charlie, do you have a comment or question for us?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Actually, here's your copy. Here's Mr. President's copy. Here's Ann's copy.
I have a copy from before. We're going to put in a bill for that again.
Yeah, so thank you.
All right,
I want to talk with them.
I'll give you one more sentence. If what's printed in here and the federal government passes, the state of Connecticut has found that you can't get it in the state of Connecticut legally. Thank you.
So Charlie, I know Charlie well. He's been advocating for whole milk in the schools as a choice for children to take in the schools. And I've been 100% behind that effort. And I know Senator Summers is committed. We're going to try to put it in on the public health. We tried education this last time, and they did their little dance, and it ended up coming out. And I'm quite sure, I might be out of line, but Representative Doug Dubitsky would support it as well. We're all supportive of choice and in particular whole milk. So thank you for coming and sharing, though. We are trying to get people more and more aware of the issue that your children actually do not have that choice right now in the schools.
In your packets, the three of you, is a copy of HB 6880 and the way the amendment went, which killed whole milk to the school system. Thank you, everybody. I wish you all the best of luck. I'm going to leave the copies on the back table.
That's a tough one. My name is Kyle Naparata. I live in Danielson, and I just wanted to thank you all for all you do, for fighting for us, for our personal freedoms, parental rights, and thank you. Everyone sees it and appreciates it.
Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. We appreciate it. Thank you. It's nice to get a thank you once in a while.
Hi, my name is Cliff Marlowe. I live in Lisbon, Connecticut, and I did speak with Doug on this, and I wanted to thank the Republicans because I know it's kind of a lonely spot up there sometimes. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know there was a big push on the legislature this current year to override home rule with the affordable housing. I think that's kind of dangerous. I emailed Doug, and Doug called me on it. We chatted briefly, and he seemed like he was for home rule and for not letting outside developers just come in. And I think there's some kind of a program on the C5013 or something where they can come in and basically put in. Okay, you're familiar with it, and I think the Republicans, fought the good fight on this. I think it's dangerous when outside developers can just come in and put in whatever they want to put in, regardless of what the capacity of the town is for the services and the needs of the people that are going to end up here. I think it's dangerous, particularly in our area where there's a lot of small towns and services are somewhat limited, and I wanted to thank you guys for fighting for that.
Thank you. Yes, you made our argument very well. We try to talk about we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have sewer, water, we don't have transportation.
Housing,
Right.
It's a good thing, but it needs to go to an area where the services are there.
Exactly.
In a lot of these small towns, they just get overwhelmed with all the needs. They're not set up for it.
100%.
So what happens a lot up in Hartford is we always say it's on the other side of the river. On the east side of the river here, we live very differently than they do on the other side of the river. And it's an uphill battle to make that argument that our towns don't fit into the molds of the Bridgeports and the Waterburys and the Hartfords. And so we are here, we're advocating for you, and thank you for that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
If you're not comfortable and you want to email us, that is completely fine too. We will leave all our contact information. We do all get a lot of emails every day, so if we can't get back to you right away, or if we don't, if there's any hesitation, just call us too. We're happy to return your calls and hear from you directly. I know some people don't like to speak publicly about whatever the issue is. You can call us directly at any time. Well, thank you to the selectmen for hosting this tonight. We appreciate it. And thank you all for being here in the heat. I hope you find a spot that's nice and cool. I do not have that spot. It's just my car.
Good luck on the long ride.
All right, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.